So today's session is on sleep. There's a thing that I often do at all sorts of organisations. It doesn't matter, actually, I sometimes do it in my courses as well. And I get people to put their hands up if they have trouble getting to sleep. And then I get them to put their hands up if they have trouble getting back to sleep when they wake up at night. And then I get them to put their hands up if they sleep 6.5 hours or less. And by then we've got pretty much everybody with their hands in the air. That's because we're sleep deprived. And the reason that we're sleep deprived is because it doesn't align with our genetic design, the way we sleep. There's a book by a guy called Daniel Everett. It's called Don't Sleep, There Are Snakes. He spent decades living with the Piraha people in the Amazon. He says the Piraha sleep whenever they're tired. The village can be as busy at 2 o'clock in the morning as it can be at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And when they sleep for about 90 minutes or 2 hours. And if you look at the human sleep cycle, it's 90 minutes or 2 hours. Another piece of evidence is that 16 hours awake and our reflexes begin to suffer, which is the best easily measured physiological insight into sleep deprivation. The reason we sleep overnight is very simply to align with our economy, nothing more than that. No human being slept for 8 hours until really the last 150 years. And if you look at a night's sleep, you'll see these sleep cycles in. So I've got an app that measures my sleep. I've been using it since March 2017. It's gathered statistics on my sleep ever since. So I have a lot of insight into my sleep. So what happens is we have these sleep cycles and we wake up. So when the researchers first started researching into sleep, they would bring people into the lab and they would hook them up and put a video camera on, and then people would go off to sleep. And they'd wake up during the night, look around themselves and go back to sleep again. But when they were asked by the researchers if they were aware they'd woken up, most of them weren't aware. We all wake up in the night, whether we think we do or not. So I can have what seems like a good solid night's sleep, and when I look at my hypnogram, which is output of the measurement device that measures my sleep, it tells me I may have woken up 2-3 times in the night. Sometimes I'm aware of it, sometimes I'm not. The problem is we're designed to sleep when we're tired. Ideally, we wouldn't really be awake for more than 8 hours, and we'd have a little nap. If you look around the world, once you get away from the global economy, where everybody's entire day is taken up for a large part of their week by work, and even if it's agricultural labour or something like that, you'll find throughout the world siestas are really the name of the game. Only a few years ago I went to Granada. We were going down the main road, which it was like Oxford Street on a busy day. Nothing was moving. The bus wasn't moving, so we got off and walked. It was crowds of people. Went into the Alhambra, came out a couple of hours later, looked around, there wasn't a single soul on the street, just us, no cars. One cafe open for the tourists, that was it. Siesta. It's natural to not cram all of your sleep into one session. So there's consequences to this, and the consequences are sleep deprivation. And one of the problems with sleep deprivation is it habituates, so you get used to it. The study that they did was on college graduates, and they deprived them of sleep, so they slept in the sleep lab and they weren't allowed to sleep for more than 6 hours a night. And so they felt tired for the first couple of weeks, and they felt less tired and less tired. And so if you ask people subjectively how tired they are, it is not a useful indication of whether they are sleep deprived or not. What's more useful is mood, especially when you wake up in the morning. So unfortunately, this becomes part of our stress cycle in the modern world. There can be all sorts of threats. Financial insecurity is the biggest one that most people deal with. It makes a really significant difference to how people feel about themselves. And financial insecurity can come to anybody. It doesn't matter how much money you've got. Clearly, if you have very little money, you're more likely to experience financial insecurity. And then there's the security of your relationships, your family. Our culture and our economy tends to fragment our society. People have to move away for work, they have to move away for college and university, and that becomes a global thing now because a lot of young people go and move overseas to be with their new spouse or vice versa. And then there's also economic factors. As traditional industries die, I suppose is the best way to put it, people move away from those areas. There's more competition for property, people get priced out of areas, they have to move on. It's continuous. It creates a perception of being separated and isolated. And then of course how you perceive yourself in relation to your peers and your job, and how you feel you're viewed by your employer, and so on and so on and so on. Threats, 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 threats. What happens is this creates a cycle of stress, which is the physiological response, anxiety, which is how you feel about it, and worry, which is what the mind does to try to make sense of the whole thing. And then of course there's this other element, which is sleep. People can't sleep because they've got a busy mind, usually. But it, in my view, is probably a combination of those things. It's anxiety, stress, and busy mind. Stress chemicals keep you alert. So that's the problem, how to solve it. What I teach, effectively, is a number of different interventions. The mindfulness meditation exercises, we're intervening in a whole load of things, probably too many to go into right now. That's quite a long road, but there are benefits all the way along it while you continue with a regular mindfulness meditation practice, something like following the breath. More and more things will slot in place for your happiness. The other interventions are stress management and emotional regulation techniques. The purpose of all of this is to intervene in that negative feedback loop, stress, anxiety, worry, and we'll add sleep deprivation into it. Stress, anxiety, worry, sleep deprivation, stress. Once you add sleep deprivation, you've got all sorts of secondary issues. So the interventions for stress management and the interventions for emotional regulation are reasonably simple, and you can use them to bring your physiology back into line and to manage your emotional state, regulate it. But we can also use all of these techniques, really, the meditations, the stress management techniques, the emotional regulation techniques. We can use them all to intervene in difficult sleep and encourage sleep and assist us to sleep. It's just a matter of what to use and when. When I started meditating, which was in 1988, I believe, really retained only one practice that I did regularly, which is a thing called counting the breaths meditation. It's the meditation that works for most people when they first start meditating to help them calm their minds. I would do it if my mind was going into overdrive while I was trying to get to sleep. Now, it doesn't work for everyone. Only 45% of people find it useful. So there are a bundle of other techniques that we can use. Counting the breaths is the numero uno option. And then there's some other meditations and some other practices, and I'll teach those today. Of all of the things that people benefit from when they do a mindfulness course, they do one of my courses anyway, because I only measure my courses, is that 80% of people sleep better. So that's a universal benefit. And they do that because they've managed to alleviate their stress. Stress chemicals keep you alert. If your stress reduces, you sleep better. It's a knock-on effect. And so, for instance, in this class where people lie down, most sessions somebody's asleep, and sometimes more than one of you. So by the end of today, I expect you all to be asleep. Meditation's the only thing you can teach where if everybody falls asleep, you know you're doing a good job. If you've ever wondered why people sit cross-legged to meditate, that's the only reason, is to stop you going to sleep. And the Zen meditation people, they tuck their legs underneath their bum, so they sit in on their ankles. You know, that definitely stops you going to sleep. That's what I'll be teaching, but we'll start off. If I had to give you some tips to help you get to sleep, there would be just things that you can do to help you sleep, you know, right now, without you doing any other practices. The first one would be setting yourself an alarm to go to bed. Set yourself an alarm to get up in the morning, set yourself an alarm to go to bed at night. And then set yourself an alarm to prepare to go to bed. Yeah? And you set that about an hour and a half before you go to bed. When you set yourself the prepare to go to bed alarm, prepare to go to bed. So I put my dressing gown on and I go and clean my teeth. I do it an hour and a half before I go to bed. For one very good reason that I clean my teeth then is because I'm going into the most brightly lit room in the house, and that's telling my brain it's morning. Yeah, very, very simply, we know that this has an effect. Modern devices like Apple iPhones, they've got a thing called night shift. You can set night shift to come on every night at 10 o'clock, and you can set the warmth. It's got a warm glow, so it moves from white to warm. So I tend to read before I go to bed, so I'll read on Kindle, but I'll use the night shift functionality. And you'll find that on a lot of phones now, something similar. So that's the thing. The first thing is an alarm to go to bed, an alarm to prepare for bed. The other thing you can do is get cooler. We sleep better at 19 degrees. The app that I use, a thing called Sleep Cycle, it gives you the average sleep quality throughout the world. And the worst sleep quality is always in the Middle East, and the best sleep quality is always in Scandinavia. And that's very simply because if you're too cold, you can warm yourself up in a jiffy. You just pull the blanket up, right? It takes a lot longer to get cool. And the part of you that needs to be cool is your body, not your hands and feet. 19 degrees is the ideal temperature. So if you've got an accurate thermometer in your house, and put it in your room and adjust your heating so that it's either 19 degrees or below. And below's fine because you can keep your body warm just by having a duvet or a blanket. So step number 1, set an alarm to go to sleep. Step number 2, stay cool. And so step number 3 is a very, very simple thing. If you take your thumbs and fingers, and your first finger, touch your thumb with your first finger. This is the typical yoga teacher's meditation pose, and that's a thing called the chin mudra. If you do that at night when you want to go to sleep, and all you do is, if you forget about it and your fingers are no longer in contact, put them back in contact again. Just touching the finger and thumb together like that transforms sleep for about 1 in 10 people. That's it, that's all you do. Finger and thumb in contact, chin mudra. Doesn't have to be tight, just so they're touching. If they stop touching and you notice, put them together. That's some little sleep tips. What I do now is I'll teach meditations, or all of these meditations are meditations that you can use as sleep interventions. So what we'll do is we'll start off with the counting the breaths meditation. So it's kind of 50-50 for this. The meditations that I've learned that help to calm people's minds are either counting the breaths or labelling the thoughts. If you prefer labelling the thoughts, label the thoughts. If you prefer counting the breaths, following along with us, count the breaths. And all we're going to do is a few minutes of counting the breaths. For nearly half of the population, or the people that try meditation and stick with it for any period of time, this is the meditation that helps to calm the mind the most. And that has an effect, and that feeds into your stress and your anxiety. But more than anything else, it will calm the mind. So what I'll do is I'll teach you the counting the breaths meditation. You can, when you're in bed, you can relax. Yeah, so you can check in with your face, your shoulders, relaxing on a few out breaths, letting the tension and tightness out is a useful thing. It's a good thing. And so counting the breaths is a meditation of noticing the breath. So it's not much different to following the breath. The relationship to the breath is the same. We're observing the breath, we're noticing it, witnessing it, like somebody who's sitting on the beach, noticing the waves rolling up, washing away, rolling up, washing away. So we're not concentrating on the waves, we're not deeply focused on the waves, we're just noticing them happen. And in the same way you notice the waves happening, you're noticing the breath happening. Noticing the breath rising, noticing the breath falling. So what we'll do is we'll start off by following the breath, because we want to build the correct relationship to the breath. Then what we'll do is we'll add a little mantra to noticing the breath, which is all a mantra is something we say in our mind when we're meditating. And then we'll move into counting the breaths. It's good to, when you do counting the breaths, to start off by noticing the breath and doing a little bit of following the breath first. So if you get yourselves comfortable, begin by following the breath. And what we'll do, we'll actually make it even more frictionless by starting with the meditation of no meditation for the breath. And the meditation of no meditation for the breath is just noticing the movement of the belly. At the top of the belly, tiny little movement. It's the belly rising and falling in time to the breath. We're just noticing that. There's no instructions. Doesn't matter if your mind wanders. Doesn't matter if your mind's busy. Nothing matters. Doesn't matter how you feel. All you're doing is noticing this movement. Belly rising, belly falling. We're just aware of the movement, nothing else. Just that tiny little movement. No instructions, no expectations. Don't get anything out of this. It's not even a meditation. So what we're going to do now is move into following the breath. So following the breath has an instruction in it. Only one thing. So the only difference between the frictionless practice we were doing, the meditation of no meditation for the breath, and following the breath is that following the breath has an instruction. And the instruction is that when you notice your mind's wandered, you bring your attention back to the breath. You can notice the breath any way you want. You can notice the movement of the belly still. Or you can notice the coolness of the in-breath and the warmth of the out-breath. Simplest meditation in the world, but one that 95% of people can't fit into their day. It consists of 4 lines in the script. Notice the breath, the mind wanders, return your attention to the breath, and repeat. Just practice this for the next few minutes. Ancient technique, it's called following the breath. Just noticing the breath rising and the breath falling, the sensation of the breath, coolness of the in-breath and the warmth of the out-breath. Whenever you notice that you're not aware of the breath, you just come back and notice the breath. All this is an exercise in focus. Focus is what our awareness is resting on. So our awareness is resting on the breath, noticing it, and then our awareness is drawn into the construct of the mind called thought. It could be the inner voice or a dialogue or images or memories or scenarios or outcomes or planning or tasks or priorities, and it goes on and on and on and on. And we become consumed by that. At some point we notice, and then we return our focus to the breath. That's all it is. A gentle pendulum process. Noticing the breath, mind wanders, back to the breath. Mind wanders, back to the breath, and repeat. The mind wanders 1,000 times. Gently, patiently, compassionately return your attention to the breath 1,000 times. And now we'll add a mantra to it to make it a little bit easier. And the mantra, all we're doing is labelling. We're noting the in-breath and we're noting the out-breath, using the mind, using the inner dialogue. And so what we do is when we're breathing in, we say in our mind rising, and when we're breathing out, we say in our mind falling. Rising, falling. We're not causing our breath to happen in time to the mantra. All we're doing is noticing the breath and repeating the mantra in time to the breath. while we're doing this, we're noticing that thoughts arise. We're noticing the ebb and flow of thoughts in the mind. The wandering, the arising of thought, the subsiding of thought. The moment of recognition when we notice that we've become part of our thought. And turning to the breath, noticing the mantra. Power of thought again. Sometimes you'll find it'll draw you into this semi-sleep where it's almost a dream. That's the hypnagogic state. If that happens, what you do is stay there. Don't force yourself awake. Don't drift off. So you wear one foot in the waking world and 1 foot in the sleep world. This comfortable semi-sleep state. What we'll do now is go into counting the breaths. So for counting the breaths, it's the same process of noticing the breath rising and falling. And what we do is we just count each successive breath. We count 1 on the in-breath, 2 on the out-breath, 3 on the in-breath, 4 on the out-breath, up to 10. When we get to 10, begin at 1 again. When we lose count, begin at 1 again. So that's 1 on the in-breath, 2 on the out-breath, 3 on the in-breath, 4 on the out-breath, up to 10. Get to 10, start at 1, lose count, start at 1. So that's counting from 1 to 10, coming back to 1 when we've finished, or starting at 1 again if we lose count. So we've practiced counting the breaths for the next few minutes. So we're noticing the rhythm of the breath. Notice it in your nostrils, especially the coolness and sharpness of the in-breath. Notice what you can smell and what you can taste, and notice whatever's around you, whatever you can hear. Collection of all sounds, the hubbub of the present moment. Notice yourself becoming aware of that, and the sensation of being pushed into the ground, the feeling of contact as gravity is doing its thing, and then in your very own time, whenever you're ready, gently return your attention to your surroundings. Maybe wiggling your fingers and toes a little bit. So I've kind of intervened in that. We could have carried on into some other relaxation meditations, but I want to kind of bring you back before we do that, because the information of when to use these is as useful as actually using them. So the counting the breaths meditation is the easiest to implement as something to assist you getting to sleep. It doesn't work so well if you wake up in the night and you want to get back to sleep again. To get ourselves back to sleep again, we want to intervene with the body, because if we've woken up and the body wants to wake up, or it thinks it's time to wake up, or it feels like you need to wake up, it'll actually start releasing stress chemical called cortisol. There's a cortisol spike, which is actually quite significant. It's 10 times the amount of cortisol in your body over the rest of the day in a normal healthy human. So what we want to do is intervene in that, and we do that at a physiological level. So there you are, you've managed to get to sleep. Counting the breaths has calmed the mind, or whatever practice you use. You might use labeling the thoughts, you might use following the breath, you might just label the breath, rising and falling, whatever it happens to be. You've managed to get to sleep and you want to wake up. You have to practice all these, try them out, see what works for you. And there you are, you've woken up at night and you want to get back to sleep again. So what we want to do is to not try to get back to sleep. The mind works against us almost universally in this way. So what happens is people wake up and they try to get back to sleep. It's just like trying to get to sleep. And you're making it more of a thing. It becomes a big deal then. I mean, it may or may not be a big deal, but you're confirming to your mind it's a big deal. So the first story in Genesis, I'm not a Christian, but this is a genius piece of wisdom. So God says, you can eat anything you want in this Garden of Eden, but don't touch that fruit, right? What that is that's our natural human tendency to elevate something that's naughty or bad, or we shouldn't have. So all of a sudden it becomes the juiciest fruit in the garden just because you've been told not to eat it. So we've elevated it as an element of our experience. Elevate something as an element of your experience, and there's a lot of emotion becomes attached to it straight away, and it becomes what I call a thing. So, I must get back to sleep is the recipe for not getting to sleep. So what you say to yourself is this: I'm not going to sleep, I'm going to meditate. because, and you will learn this actually, that in the middle of the night, half an hour or an hour's meditation is at least as good as half an hour or an hour's sleep, without the slightest shadow of a doubt. Even if you've only got a little while to wake up. You know, let's say you set your alarm for 7 and it's 5:30 and you're awake and you're aware that you're sleep deprived, so you don't feel like springing out of bed to greet a brand new day. Your mind's not going to let you get back to sleep. You're going to struggle to get a full sleep cycle in anyway, unless you just happen to go to sleep straight away. So what you do is you say to yourself, okay then, I'm not going to sleep. What I'll do instead is I'll meditate. And this is the meditation that you do. And I'll give you a couple of little tips to help you to use it in a specific way that will help you to relax even more than you will anyway. It's called the 410s meditation. And we'll add one extra element, well, 2 extra elements, but one that we don't normally add. And so because we're living in a busy world, busy mind, busy world, modern mind, lots of priorities, lot of tasks, lot of problems, lot of things to do, lot of threats, lot of stress, our physiology is responded. And the way it's responded is by adding musculoskeletal tension. We're tense, our eyebrows are furrowed, we're squinting, we're gritting our teeth, we can't sit still, our shoulders are hunched forward, our posture's not useful, we're not sitting up, our elbows aren't by our side, we're leaning forward as we walk, we're staring into our mobile phone, we're trying to avoid the present moment because it's unsatisfactory because of the deluge of things to do, places to go, people to see, that's seemingly infinite, whatever it might happen to be. Whatever it might happen to be, and it manifests itself in tension. So there's a couple of things that we can do straight off before we start meditating to resolve our tension. It's useful to have your elbows by your side. Whether you're lying down or sitting, that helps. And then if you place your tongue against the sharp part of your teeth, just enough so that you're aware of the sharpness of your teeth. That's all you need, is to be aware of the sharpness of your teeth. And you're noticing the breath rising and falling. Just noticing the breath, just noticing the sharpness of the teeth. And then you place your thumb and forefinger together. And all you're going to do is throughout the session, and assuming you're trying to get to sleep, you just keep them in contact. If you find that they're no longer in contact, you put them back in contact again. You're noticing the breath rising, noticing the breath falling. You're noticing the sharpness of the teeth. You're noticing your elbows are by the side. You notice your finger and thumb, first finger and thumb is in contact. And allow yourself to become aware of the area around your eyes. You might have to raise your eyebrows, or squint, or frown for a little while, something to help you to connect to your eyes. You might want to start with the forehead, in which case you place your palm very, very close to your forehead without actually touching it. And then you're focusing your sensation, you're focusing your awareness on the sensations that creates, which are quite complex. There's the tingling of the tiny hairs on the forehead as they're touched by the palm, and the warmth of the palm. Elbows still by the side, noticing the tongue against the sharp part of the teeth, finger and thumb in contact. And then slowly, for up to 10 out breaths, and you count them in your mind, you're relaxing the eyebrows, the eyes and cheeks. Incremental relaxation, just letting a tiny little bit more tension out of your eyes, your eyebrows and your cheeks. A little bit more on each out breath. And just count the out breaths up to 10. So again, checking in on all these parts of the body, checking your tongue is in contact with the sharp part of your teeth, your elbows are at your side, your thumb and first finger are in contact, and noticing the relaxation as you breathe out on your mouth and lips, your jaw and your throat. The same as with the eyes, with the jaw, relaxing on 10 out breaths. Counting the out breath in your mind as you breathe out. This is like, in a way, it's like counting the breaths. So you're counting 10 out breaths for the eyes, 10 out breaths for the jaw. And we're going to do the shoulders and the hands in a moment. When you're doing this as an aid to sleep, if you lose count, just start with the eyes again. You get to the end, just start with the eyes. So what you're doing is you're counting 10 out breaths for the eyes, relaxing the eyes, 10 out breaths for the jaw, 10 out breaths for the shoulders, 10 out breaths for the hands. And in between you're checking in, checking your elbows by the side, tongue in contact with the sharp part of the teeth, and your first finger and thumb are in contact. And then relax your back and sides of your neck and your shoulders on the out breath for 10 consecutive out breaths. breathing in normally and noticing however it is your hands feel. Finger and thumb in contact. And what we're going to do is relax the hands. Elbows by the side, tongue still in contact with the sharp part of the teeth. Breathing in normally, breathing out, relaxing the hands. Just letting a tiny little bit of tension and pressure, tightness and stress out of your hands on each out breath. Just keeping the forefinger and thumb in contact. And again, 10 out breaths on the hands, counting them in your mind. And so as you wake up in the night, you then go straight back to the eyes again and then keep going. 10 out breaths for the eyes, 10 out breaths for the jaw, 10 out breaths for the shoulders, 10 out breaths for the hands. And you cycle round and round. And remember, you're not trying to get to sleep here. This is a meditation, it's a mindfulness meditation, because when your mind wanders, you're bringing it back to the present moment. It's a relaxation meditation. You're reconnecting with your physiology, you're becoming more aware of your physiological state, learning to relax. Mind wanders back to the present moment. So it's like following the breath, just a more complex version. What we're going to do now is just let our minds go free. Notice the breath, belly rising and falling. That tiny little movement. And if you wish in your mind, say the mantra, following the breath mantra, say rising, falling. And then focusing your attention on the sensation of the breath in the nostrils, especially the coolness of the in-breath. What you can smell and taste, and the sensation of being pushed into the ground, and in your very own time, gently return your attention to your surroundings.